It's 2:14 in the morning. The house is quiet, but my phone lights up. 3 messages. Not for me, not for me. A hotel address, a room number. My stomach drops. I check the porch camera. There she is walking up with some guy's hand on her back. Then my bank app dings $189 charged at that same motel. My card. My name. That's not fraud. That's betrayal. I spread it all out on the kitchen counter. Screenshots, receipts, timestamps. The evidence is louder than any argument we've ever had. And standing there, I realize this isn't just about her. It's about me, my pride, my family, my damn manhood. So here's the question. If you caught this in your own house with your own card, what would you do? Confront her? Walk away? Call a lawyer. Drop your answer below because every man has to decide where his line is. Before tonight, my life had lanes. Work, home, sleep, repeat. I'm a mid-level operations guy at a parts distributor, steady hours, decent benefits. Nothing flashy. We live in a quiet cul-de-sac where the trash gets picked up on Tuesdays and the lawns all look the same. My truck's a 10-year-old Chevy with a coffee stain in the cup holder and a squeak I keep promising to fix. Saturdays, I'm usually in the garage sorting sockets, pretending I'll finally hang those shelves. Sundays, backyard BBQ burgers for the kids' ribs when I'm feeling ambitious, the game humming from a portable speaker. My son Jake runs routes in the grass, and I loft him wobbly passes he swears are perfect. Emily handles the salads, the neighbor waves, and life feels dependable. That's who I was this afternoon, a man who believed in routines. And belief is a comfortable thing right up until it isn't. Tonight, put a crack in all of it, and once you see the crack, you can't unsee it. If you're wondering about Emily, yeah, she's the kind of woman people describe as put together. Hair that never seems out of place, a calendar that never misses a birthday, a smile the neighbors trust with their spare keys. She runs the household finances because she's better with details, and I didn't argue. I like the feeling of being taken care of in the places I'm sloppy. Her parents adore me, my mom adores her, and our couple friends post those group photos where we all look the same kind of happy. We fought sometimes money dishes, in-laws, but nothing that didn't end in a sigh and a joke. She called me her rock. I believed her. Maybe I needed to. The truth is, guys like me live on simple math, work hard, show up, keep your word, and the world won't blindside you. But the world doesn't care about our math. It keeps its own books, and sometimes the balance comes due. Looking back, the first wobble was so small I laughed it off. Emily started keeping her phone face down at dinner. She said it was a new focus habit, no screens at meals. Fair. Then the gym hours crept later, new class, new instructor traffic on the way home. I joked that her hot yoga must be really hot. She smiled, kissed my cheek, and asked me to warm up the leftovers. Harmless, right? One night, she came home with that hotel shampoo scent, clean generic like every room you've ever stayed in on a business trip. I knew it because I travel a few times a year. I told myself she'd changed brands. It felt ridiculous to notice, so I pretended I didn't. Men do that a lot. We spot a thread, we don't pull it because pulling means you might unravel something you can't knit back together. Then it was the credit card. I'm old school. I keep a glove box envelope for receipts. Emily goes paperless. When a charge hits my phone, I usually swipe it away. That night, I didn't. Hudson Lodge, 64. Not our usual places. I asked casually. She said lunch with a client, split the check. No big deal. The tone was light, the eyes a half-second late. I wanted to be a reasonable husband, so I nodded and opened a beer. Later in the garage, I stared at that charge again, like it might explain itself if I gave it time. It didn't. I told myself men don't snoop. We trust, then verify when we must. I wasn't ready to verify. I was ready to sleep, to forget to be the guy who believes his wife and enjoys his life. But something in me marked the date like you mark a dent on your truck. You keep driving, but you know it's there. What really got me wasn't the money. It was the rhythm shift. Emily started apologizing for small things she never cared about, leaving a light on, running late by 10 minutes, forgetting to thaw chicken. It felt like tiptoeing. The house got quieter even when the TV was loud. Jake asked if everything was okay. I taught him how to cut the grass without missing edges and told him everything was fine. That's the job, right? You carry the weight so your kid doesn't have to. At night, I lay awake counting reasons I was being paranoid. New project at her office, hormones, seasonal blues. Men my age don't want drama. We want peace. So I kept the peace. But peace built on doubt isn't peace. It's just silence with a heartbeat. And once you hear that heartbeat, you start hearing it everywhere. The grocery store, the shower, the quiet drive home where the radio can't fill the space. I decided to watch, not accuse. That's a line a lot of us draw. Don't blow up your house without evidence. I set up alerts on the card, not sneaky, just normal security. I checked the porch cam more often, saying I was looking for packages. And I noticed patterns. Tuesday gym nights stretched into 2-hour gaps. The good blouse showed up on odd days. A new perfume, a new playlist, a new laugh. I heard through the bathroom door. She wasn't cruel. She was careful. That's almost worse. One Thursday, her location pinged not at the gym, but near a highway motel. My chest got tight, then stubborn. Maybe her friend needed a ride. Maybe her phone glitched. Men like me will stack maybes like sandbags when the river rises. But rivers rise anyway. That night, I sat in my truck engine off, hands on the wheel, and I told myself the same lie good men tell: sleep on it, and it'll feel smaller in the morning. Morning didn't help. I made eggs. She made excuses. We both pretended not to taste the truth. At work, I missed a shipment error I would have caught blindfolded. My boss asked if everything was good at home. I said yes and changed the subject to inventory. On lunch, I opened the bank app, then closed it like it was a door I didn't want to walk through. After shift, Jake asked if I'd throw the football. I did, but my arm was somewhere else. He dropped an easy one and looked at me hurt. That hit harder than any receipt. The thing about being a man in this age bracket is you're the hinge. You hold the door for everyone, wife, kid, job. When the hinge rusts, the whole house creaks. I knew I needed a plan, not just feelings. Not yelling, not sulking. A plan I could look in the mirror and respect at 50, not regret at 60. So I started collecting facts the way I fix a leaky sink, one small turn at a time. I checked the gym's class schedule. There was no class at the hour she swore by. I scrolled the porch cam history and saw her leave twice on work from home days. I printed the last 2 months of card statements and circled what didn't fit our life. No hacking, no traps, just paying attention. I talked to Michael, my oldest friend, the one who'll tell me if I'm being an idiot. He didn't feed the fire. He held the line. Don't accuse without proof. Don't ignore what you already know. That night, I put everything in a plain folder and slid it under the toolbox. I wasn't building a case to win an argument. I was building a spine to stand up straight, whatever came next. Men need that. Not rage, not revenge, a spine. And then came the night that brought me here. A late ping, a motel charge that matched the address in those texts and the porch cam, catching 2 shadows I couldn't unsee. I didn't scream. I stacked. Screenshots. Times. The card alert. The video clip. I set them on the kitchen counter like tools before a job. The house was so quiet I could hear the fridge hum. That's when it hit me, not just that she'd crossed a line, but that I had one too. This wasn't about catching her in a lie. It was about deciding who I am with the truth in my hands. Every man I know has a story where he wishes he'd stood taller. I'm not interested in adding another. So I took a breath, felt the floor under my boots, and chose the next minute on purpose. So that next minute turned into a plan. Watch first, speak later. I told myself I'd treat this like a home project measured twice cut once. Emily started getting home later from catch-up at the office. The phone stayed face down, screen time jumped, and the tiny courtesies we used to trade text me when you're leaving went missing. I didn't accuse. I adjusted. I kept the fridge stocked, kept Jake's routine tight, and kept my eyes open. When she came in past 9, I didn't ask why. I asked if she'd eaten. She said yes quick, like the answer was preloaded. The room felt 2 degrees colder. Men my age know that chill. It's the air before a storm. I went to the garage and stood by the tool chest, not to fix anything, just to stand with something that made sense. Steel doesn't lie. Wrenches don't dodge questions. I decided I wouldn't either once I had what I needed. From there, I paid attention to the little things because little things turn big on you. Her calendar got vague, meeting late, don't wait up. The gym bag was heavy on nights she didn't sweat. She started showering before saying hello. Maybe harmless, maybe not. I let the evidence tell the story. On my lunch break, I thumbed through our shared credit card app. Nothing fancy, just scrolling like I do when I check gas prices. I spotted a diner charge across town at an odd hour. Emily hates diners. Too noisy, she says. I saved the screenshot and told myself not to jump to conclusions. That's what young guys do. Grown men collect facts. After work, I took a longer route home and passed that diner slow enough to read the hours on the neon sign. Open late. Couples at corner booths. The sort of place where secrets look like coffee refills. I parked 2 blocks down and sat for a minute wondering when my life got this quiet. I didn't want to become a detective, but silence forces you into roles you didn't audition for. I set simple rules: no hacking, no spyware, no madness. Just notice. The next week, the phone stayed face down again, this time buzzing with a name I didn't recognize, first name, last initial. Could be anyone. Could be everything. Emily's laugh changed to lighter, almost rehearsed, like she was warming up for someone else. That stung more than the charges. Men like me can live with bills. We don't do well with rehearsals. On Friday, she mentioned a team happy hour. I nodded, kissed her cheek, and made tacos with Jake. After dishes, I checked the porch cam feed from earlier. The camera caught her leaving in that black blouse, the one that only comes out when there's a reason. I saved the clip and closed the app. Out loud, just to hear something real, I said, "Okay." Then I cleaned the stovetop like I was scrubbing rust off a blade. If there's one thing I've learned from fixing things around the house, it's that problems always leave a trail: water dust, bent nails. People do too. I started glancing at the truck's location feature, nothing sneaky, just the built-in app to check where we parked when we split cars. A few nights, her dot hovered near a strip of highway motels and chain restaurants. Could be coincidence. Could be a client dinner. Could be the truth I already knew. I didn't drive there. Not yet. I wrote the dates down on a yellow pad like a grown-up detention list. At work, I stayed late to avoid coming home first, to avoid that hollow moment where you can hear your own footsteps. My supervisor asked if I wanted overtime. For once, I said yes. Busy hands are better than a busy mind, but busy doesn't fix broken. It just delays the noise. That night, I heard it anyway inside my chest, steady as a metronome. When the mind starts guessing, you need a second set of eyes. So I called Michael. He's the friend who will tell me if I'm being soft or stupid. We met at a hardware store because that's where men go when they don't want to be seen meeting. I told him what I had charges clips the motel strip. He didn't flinch. He listened. Then he said the thing good friends say: don't make this about pride. Make it about proof. He suggested simple steps: save everything. Mark times, look for patterns, not one-offs. No following cars, no bad television. We walked the aisles pretending to care about drill bits. He asked if I was sleeping. I laughed. He didn't. He put a hand on my shoulder, and for 5 seconds, I felt like a human being instead of a walking spreadsheet. Whatever you do it once, he said. Do it clean. I drove home with that sentence riding shotgun. Armed with calm, I tightened the net, not to catch her, but to catch myself from falling apart. I turned transaction alerts back on for my card the way you turn on porch lights before a trip. Reasonable. Normal. I set a rule: if a charge hit outside our usual circle work grocery gas, I'd take a picture, then let it go for 24 hours. The next evening, a restaurant name popped up I didn't recognize. Not fancy, but a sit-down. 2 towns over. I checked our texts. She'd said working late. 24 hours is a long time when you're building a backbone. I mowed the lawn stripes, straight changed the air filter, and threw a ball with Jake until the sun quit. The world looked ordinary. My insides didn't. In the shower, I practiced what not to say, the kind of lines that turn houses into courtrooms. I dried off, stared at my face in the fogged mirror, and told the truth: I was afraid. Fear has a way of making you small, so I did something simple that made me feel big enough. I cooked. Pork chops, cast iron, the way my dad taught me, salt, pepper patience. The kitchen smelled like a memory I could trust. Emily texted that she'd be late. I kept the pan warm and plated hers anyway. She came in past 9 with that light smile that doesn't reach the eyes. Long day, she said. I nodded and asked about the new client she'd mentioned last week. She answered fast and thin. I didn't push. Men in our age bracket learn that pushing for the wrong thing hurts worse than waiting for the right moment. After dinner, she showered. I took out the trash and checked the bag out of habit. 2 small receipts tucked into a napkin, coffee, and pie at a diner I'd never heard of. Nothing criminal about pie, but pie at 8:47 p.m. tells its own story. I kept telling myself not to be the guy who reads tea leaves in the trash. Still, stories stack. Saturday morning, Emily announced a self-care day: nails and a facial back by 3. I nodded, loaded the washer, and tried to be the version of me I liked: steady, useful, quiet. By 2, the weather turned mean dark clouds wind. At 2:30, she texted running late. At 4:12, the porch cam recorded an Uber drop-off from the same direction as the motel strip. She came in smelling like hotel soap again. She said the spa used a new product line. Maybe they do. I wanted to ask for the brand name, the receipt, the phone number. Instead, I folded towels and put on the game. When Jake cheered a touchdown, I clapped like a man whose house wasn't humming with questions. That night, I put 3 dates in the yellow pad and drew one slow line underneath them. Lines have to lead somewhere, so I followed mine to the source I could trust most, the places money goes. I pulled 2 months of statements and circled anything outside our patterns. No judgment, just circles. A second phone accessory store I didn't remember, a gas station off an exit we don't use, a liquor store receipt at noon on a Tuesday. It could all be nothing. It could all be something. I wrote ask later next to each circle. Emily watched a show upstairs while I worked at the dining table. The house felt like a library with a secret. I thought about my dad, how he handled hard things, slow, deliberate, never in anger. When I was a kid, he once fixed a leak by just sitting under the sink staring at it until the drip told him the truth. I tried that with my marriage. I sat. I stared. I listened to the drip. Drips turn into floods when you ignore them. On Wednesday, Michael texted, "You good?" I said, "Define good." He sent back an address to a reputable private investigator, said if I ever needed it, use it once, not as a hobby. I saved the number but didn't call. I wanted to see what I could learn without outsourcing my backbone. That afternoon, a charge hit from a wine bar near the motel strip. Emily texted running late team toast. I thumbed OK, then put my phone face down just to feel what that felt like. It felt like a lie. At 9, she walked in bright and careful. I asked how the toast was. "Fun," she said. "New client closed." I smiled like a man who believes in toasts. After she went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table and compared timestamps, the charge, the camera motion, the Uber ping from last weekend. The 3 dots lined up like fence posts. Fences keep things in or out. They also mark property lines. I needed to know where mine was. The next day, I took a half day and drove past that wine bar around the same hour. I parked across the lot, radio off, hands quiet on the wheel. The bar was classy enough to hide plain sight, dim lights, polished wood couples who laugh soft. No Emily. Not that day. But I recognized the back alley where Uber drivers wait, and the motel sign flickering 2 blocks over. I felt stupid and sharp at the same time, like a man shadowing his own life. On the way home, I grabbed burgers and sat at a park table watching a dad teach his kid to ride a bike. He ran alongside until the kid found balance. Then he let go. The kid wobbled, stayed up, cheered. I wondered when I'd let go of denial of the version of us I'd been propping up. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means facing what's in front of you. That night, Emily said she'd be at the gym. I nodded and checked the class schedule from my phone. Nothing listed past 7. It was 7:30. I paced the garage and cleaned a wrench that wasn't dirty. At 8:12, an alert hit for a mid-range motel, just a hold at first, the kind that posts after checkout. My chest tightened in that familiar way, the heartbeat that says, decide. I drove not fast, not reckless, just steady. I parked 2 lots over because shame is louder than engines. I didn't go in. I didn't need a scene. I watched the exit, the stairwell, the thin curtains. At 9:02, Emily came out with a man I didn't recognize. He touched her elbow. She didn't pull away. I didn't take a picture. I didn't need one. Some moments carved themselves. Driving home, the wheel felt heavy like I was towing a trailer no one could see. Michael called. I answered on speaker eyes on the road voice flat. I saw enough, I said. He didn't ask for details. He asked what I wanted to be on the other side of this, angry or honorable. I said both. He said, pick one first. I said honorable. He told me to sleep, to not text, to not burn down something I might need to walk through tomorrow. I stuck the phone in the cup holder and watched the green lights tick me back toward my block. The houses looked the same. Mine didn't. I pulled into the driveway and sat with the engine off until the ticking under the hood matched my breath. For the first time in weeks, I felt clear. Not better, not fixed, just clear like a sky after thunder where you can see every tree. Clarity is quiet, but it's not weak. The next morning, I got Jake to school early and told my boss I needed the day. No drama, just a day. I printed what mattered statements, the diner receipt, a still from the porch cam, then put it all in that plain folder. I wrote 2 lists on a legal pad, what I know and what I won't do. Under what I won't do, I wrote no yelling, no name-calling, no threatening custody, no revenge tours. Under what I know, I kept it short, time dates, facts I could say once without stumbling. At lunch, I changed the oil in the Chevy because my hands needed a job that answered back. When the drain plug clicked into place, I felt something like control return to my body. I wiped my hands, looked at the house, and told the truth out loud. Tonight, I ask. Tonight, I listen. As evening came, the house felt like a stage before the curtain, everything in place, breath held. I grilled chicken because normal food makes hard talks feel less like trials. Emily walked in on time with that careful smile. Jake was at a friend's, which felt like mercy. We ate, made small talk, rinsed plates. I dried my hands and told her I needed a conversation we couldn't skip. I set the folder on the table and slid it over. Not accusations, just dates and charges and a still frame of 2 figures under a motel light. She stared at the paper like it might bite. The room shrank to the sound of the refrigerator. I said, I'm not here to perform. I'm here to understand. Her shoulders dropped, then squared. She opened her mouth closed, it opened it again. Whatever words were coming would change our lives. And whether they broke me or built me, I was finally ready to hear them. Her mouth finally opened, and what came out wasn't a confession or a denial, just smoke. You're overthinking. It's not what it looks like. We've both been distant. Half answers, half-hearted, all sideways. I kept my voice level because shouting invites counterattacks, and I wasn't looking to trade bruises. I asked for a straight story. She asked why I didn't trust her. I pointed to the paper, the dates. She pointed to old arguments, old winners, the time I missed Jake's parent night. It became a tug of war over a pit I couldn't see the bottom of. Men like me hate circles. We speak fix it, not spin it. I tried to ground us. Is there someone else? She stared at the refrigerator like it might give her courage. I don't want to hurt you, she finally said. That wasn't yes, but it wasn't no. The room changed shape. My hands went cold. I told her we'd pause for 10 minutes. I stepped outside and let the night air slap me awake. When I came back in, I tried again, the way you try a bolt with a different wrench. I'm not here to punish you. I just want the truth. She folded her arms like a shield and said, we'd been off for a while. Work stress, feeling unseen. The talk felt like a script she'd practiced in the car. I didn't fight her list. Some of it was true. I asked one question 3 ways. Is there a person? Her lips thinned. I've had conversations, she said. Conversations. What a soft word for something sharp. I asked if those conversations happened in motels. She flinched, then shifted subjects to money, to chores, to how tired she felt. I watched her dodge like a boxer who still might swing. I didn't chase. I let the silence work. Finally, she said, I don't know what I want. I did. I wanted dignity. And you don't get that from fog. Fog makes a man reach for something solid, so I laid out the next piece. If there's a story, tell it once. If not, I'll find it. Not a threat, just a promise to my future self. She said I was being dramatic. I said I was being alive. We spiraled for 20 minutes. Fragments, deflections, the kind of talk that scrapes your throat without landing a punch. When the words ran out, there was only breathing. She said she needed space. I said I needed answers. We stared past each other like 2 people reading different screens. Somewhere in there, I recognized the real fight wasn't between us. It was between truth and the version of us we kept posing for pictures. I told her we'd sleep in separate rooms. She nodded like it was a mercy. I changed the sheets in the guest room with the clumsy care of a man making a bed for a storm. Morning didn't bring peace. It brought momentum. I took Jake to school, kept my voice light, told a dumb joke that landed just enough to make him smile. On the drive back, I rehearsed a conversation with a lawyer and then hated that I was the kind of man who needed to. At home, Emily was quiet, careful moving around me like I was a hot stove. I cleared my throat and told her calm as I could that I'd be verifying everything: cards, locations, timelines. No sneaking, no cloak and dagger, just clarity. She rolled her eyes and said I was obsessed. Maybe, but obsession is just focus with a limp. I left for work and carried the weight into the warehouse like a duffel full of bricks. Boxes were honest. Orders arrived, orders shipped. Nothing argued back. I moved pallets until my shoulders burned, then clocked out and sat in the truck until the cab cooled down enough to think. Thinking only got me so far. Action feels better in a man's hands. I called Michael from the cab and said I was close to the line where proof stops being a pile and becomes a wall. He told me to keep my head and keep receipts. After we hung up, I drove to the highway strip. I'd avoided the place with the chain restaurants and the motels that smell like bleach and denial. I parked where I could see comings and goings without being a spectacle. An hour passed. A second. The sun slid behind dirty glass. My stomach growled. I chewed a stick of gum like it owed me money. At 6:18, my phone buzzed with a charge from a mid-range hotel on that very block. No name I recognized, no work trip on her calendar. The bell in my head rang once stunned, then twice angry. I sat up and watched the lobby door like it might confess. Confessions didn't walk out. People did one by one, all of them strangers. I considered leaving, considered pretending I'd tried. Then a rideshare pulled up, and Emily stepped out in the black blouse that had become a signal. She didn't see me. She headed inside with quick feet and a fixed face. I didn't follow. I took a picture of the time on my dashboard, then another of the hotel sign, then put the phone down. Some moments, a lens makes you smaller. I kept my eyes up and counted floor lights until my mouth went dry. Men talk about fight or flight, but there's a third thing, freeze. I sat in it, breathing slow until the door opened again. A man came out first, tall, neat, a shirt ironed by either a careful hand or a careless conscience. Emily followed, hair tied back, like she'd been planning this exit all day. He touched her elbow. She didn't flinch. I waited until they both drove off before I moved because I didn't trust what my legs would do. The truck started on the first turn like it knew I needed one thing to behave. I pulled into a strip mall lot and stared at the steering wheel. That's when the anger showed up. Not wild, not loud, contained like heat behind a door. I replayed the last weeks, last months, all the little lies with polite edges. The late meetings, the self-care, the diner pie. I thought about the version of me that would storm in, make a scene go viral for the worst reasons. Then I pictured Jake's face. Courtrooms. The kind of sorrow that sticks to a kid's shoes. I swallowed hard and chose the dignified kind of fury, the kind that lets a man drive home without breaking every rule he set for himself. I put the truck in gear and headed for the highway. The highway at night tells the truth. You're just one more set of headlights trying to outrun your thoughts. I set the cruise a notch under the limit and let the lane hum through my hands. The radio was on low classic rock, filling in the gaps like spackle over a crack that's already spreading. I breathed in counts of 4, the way you do when a doctor says deep breath and you pretend this is ordinary. My mind wanted revenge. My spine wanted respect. Those two argue loud. I kept my eyes on the white lines and promised myself I'd act like the man I want my son to become. That promise didn't fix anything, but it kept the wheel steady. Somewhere between exits, my throat tightened, and I swallowed it back. Men cry, sure, but not while driving 70 in a storm of someone else's choices. I rolled down the window and let cold air argue for me. Cold air makes everything sharp. By the time I pulled off at a gas station, I had enough focus to make coffee that tasted like endurance. I stood under fluorescent lights that made everyone look like a suspect and stared at the receipt until the ink felt like it might run. I didn't need more proof, but my bones wanted the kind that doesn't wiggle. I checked our shared account one more time. There it was, room charge posted not pending. Same hotel, same time window. The line item looked like a fingerprint pressed into wet concrete. I screenshotted it, then sent it to my own email because I didn't trust the cloud not to disappear when I needed it. Back in the truck, I laid the photos on the passenger seat, like cards in a hand I never asked to play. The cab smelled like coffee and desperation. I took a breath that hurt and put the key back in. Hurt has layers, and the next one came with sound. The radio switched to a late-night call-in show where people confessed to strangers. A man talked about the day he found his wife's second phone, how he felt both stupid and strangely free. I turned it up until the speaker rattled, not for advice, but for company. I drove aimlessly exit to exit, letting the dotted lines count for me. Somewhere between the third and fourth song, a thought landed. Denial wasn't protecting Jake. It was just postponing the lesson. Men teach by what we tolerate. I hated that. I hated that more than I hated the motel. My breathing sped up. The cab felt smaller. I cracked the window again and let the air slap sense into me. The anger circled looking for a place to land, and I told it to wait. Not now. Not until I could use it without burning down what I still needed standing. Standing is a choice, so I chose. It pulled into a rest stop, parked under a busted light, and sat still. I scrolled the folder I'd built. Dates, charges, the porch cam, still the dashboard clock. A story with a spine. The last piece I didn't have was a name, but names are just labels for the same cut. What mattered was the cut. I thought about calling Emily, offering one last door to the truth. Then I pictured her answering in that voice, shaped for evasion. I didn't want more fog. I wanted the kind of sentence you can set a future on: clean, hard, undeniable. I stared at my reflection in the glass until it stopped looking like a stranger. Out loud, I said, "You're going to be okay." The man in the glass believed me enough to keep me from shattering. I put the truck in drive and headed for home, steady as a plumb line. Home didn't feel like home when I walked in. The kitchen was spotless, the lights low, the air thick with the scent of a candle she always lights after long days. Emily sat at the table with a mug that had gone cold. She looked at me like a judge looks at a defendant who won't plead. "We can talk," she said. I nodded and put the folder down, not like a weapon, like a ledger. I told her what I saw, what I knew, what the receipts said without raising their voices. She started with a quiet, "I'm sorry," the kind that means I'm sorry you found out. I didn't flinch. I asked for the truth, the way a man asks for a wrench, simple, necessary. She closed her eyes, opened them, and said the name. One story, one line I couldn't uncross. The sound of it was worse than the paper. Worse has a way of getting worse before it gets clean. She started explaining how it just happened, bad timing, feeling lonely in our own house. I let her talk until the words ran in circles. Then I asked the only question that mattered. "Is it over?" She stared at the corner of the table where the varnish had a bubble and didn't answer. Silence can be a confession. Mine was. I stood up because sitting felt like surrender. I told her we were done pretending. The next steps would be adult steps. Lawyers, accounts, custody schedules that don't drown our kid. She started to cry real tears, and for a second my chest cracked. I handed her a tissue because kindness isn't weakness. Then I walked to the garage to breathe, where the world is arranged on pegboards and shelves, where I could hear my own anger without letting it drive. The garage has saved me more than once. I clicked the radio on low, that late-night DJ whispering like an old friend. I sat on the stoop between the house and the concrete and counted the smells: oil, cedar, old rain in the cardboard. My breathing came back in steady pulls. The highway still ran in my ears, a ghost lane looping the block. I thought about my vows, not the pretty parts, the hard parts: honor, protect. Protect doesn't always mean keep together. Sometimes it means keep safe. I pictured Jake at his next game scanning the bleachers for me, and I promised him quietly that I'd be there, not as a wreck, but as a dad. The promise steadied my hands. I texted Michael, "It's real." He replied in 1 minute, "I'm with you. Keep it clean." I killed the radio and felt the silence change from enemy to tool. Tools need a plan, so I made one. I walked back inside and told Emily we'd keep the house quiet tonight and speak to a mediator tomorrow. No more spin, no more shadows. She nodded, empty, like a person in a waiting room, about to hear the diagnosis they already know. I gathered the papers and slid them back into the folder, not to hide them, to close that chapter. Upstairs, the hallway felt longer than usual. In Jake's room, the trophies on the shelf looked like they belonged to a calmer world. I sat on his bed and let the tired finally find me. My phone buzzed with a midnight replay of the day, charges, names, a motel sign I'll never unsee. I set it face down and listened to my own breathing until it matched the quiet of the house. Then I drew one line in my head. Tomorrow starts the part where I rebuild, not argue. If tomorrow was for rebuilding, tonight was for certainty. I opened Michael's text and called the investigator. He answered like a man who's heard every version of my story. I kept it simple: dates, places, the motel, a first name. He asked for 48 hours and a retainer. I gave him both. I didn't want gossip. I wanted ground. After I hung up, I wrote 3 goals on a sticky note. Protect Jake, protect the house, protect my sanity. The list steadied me more than any speech. I slept light, woke early, and packed lunches like it was any weekday in America. PB&J, apple slices, a dumb note in Jake's bag that said, "Go get 'em." At 9, the mediator confirmed for the afternoon. At 10, the investigator texted, "Starting now. Keep your routine." I did work coffee checklist because men like us get through storms by doing the next obvious thing. Around noon, my phone buzzed again. "Got a name for your guy. Ryan. More soon." More soon is a cruel phrase when your life's on fire. I stacked boxes at the warehouse and pretended the squeal of the pallet jack was louder than my thoughts. At break, the investigator called from a parking lot wind in the mic boots on gravel. He said Ryan wasn't just some random fling. He showed up as a consultant at Emily's office a few months back. That's how they met. He bounced between firms, always short stints, always around finance-adjacent roles that don't leave much paper. And he's not single, the investigator added. Wears a ring sometimes, sometimes not. That tells me he adjusts to the room. My stomach nodded in a new way. This wasn't just marriage trouble. It smelled like someone working angles. The investigator said he'd check public filings and complaints, then stake out a coffee spot Ryan favors. You'll have something concrete by morning. I thanked him, hung up, and stared at my hands. They looked like my dad's steady, even when the heart isn't. Steady doesn't mean numb. I drove to the mediator with a folder on the passenger seat and the investigator in my ear. Emily arrived looking small and polished. The mediator was kind and neutral, the human version of beige paint. We talked schedules, accounts, ground rules. The room felt orderly, which was a relief. Then my phone buzzed face down on the table. I didn't touch it. Boundaries matter. After in the parking lot, Emily asked if we could slow walk the money part. That phrasing scraped. I told her we'd be careful but clear. On the drive home, I checked the message. The investigator had sent links online complaints, naming a Ryan who cold-pitched refinancing and credit cleanup, then disappeared when fees hit. Different last names, same script. My throat went dry. I pulled into a grocery lot and called back. He said, "Your wife may be tangled with a guy who only loves opportunity." I stared through the windshield until the glass turned into water. Water finds the cracks. I went home and checked our credit monitoring. Nothing drastic, but a new inquiry I didn't recognize. A lender we'd never used dated last week. I swallowed hard and took photos. When Emily came in, I kept it calm. "Did you look into a refi or a line of credit?" She blinked, slow. Someone from work mentioned rates. I asked, "Who?" She said, "A friend." I said the friend's name was Ryan, and her shoulders told me the rest. I didn't accuse. I explained. Our house is more than wood and drywall. It's where Jake counts his birthdays. It's the one thing I promised myself I'd never gamble. She said she didn't sign anything. I believed she believed that. Predators are good at making wrong things feel almost right. After she went upstairs, I texted the investigator the lender's name. He replied 5 minutes later he's pitched that exact product to 3 other employees at her firm. When a pattern shows up, you either face it or get rolled by it. I called Michael, laid it out, and asked if he could be at my place after dinner. He said yes before I finished asking. We sat at the kitchen table like we have 100 times, 2 beers, 2 men who prefer action to drama. I showed him the inquiry, the complaints, the investigator's notes. He nodded slow, then said the thing I needed. This is bigger than a bad marriage. Protect the asset. We pulled our credit reports, froze what we could set. Fraud alerts, changed the online banking passwords. None of it felt heroic. It felt like clearing brush before a wildfire jumps the fence. At 9, the investigator texted a photo from a coffee shop. Ryan at a corner table with a pad of paper and 3 business cards from different companies, none of them matching the LinkedIn we found. Michael whistled low. Guy's a chameleon. Chameleons blend until they don't. The investigator followed with a voicemail of Ryan's pitch to a stranger. Smooth talk about unlocking equity. Keeping it discreet, relationships built on trust. I didn't need subtext. I could translate it just fine. After Michael left, I called the lender on the inquiry and asked 3 plain questions. Application status, cosigner, contact person. The rep was polite but cagey. "I can confirm an initial pull," he said. "No completed file on record." I wrote down the time, his name, and thanked him. Then I walked into the living room, where Emily sat on the couch like a statue. I told her what I'd learned, not to corner her, to give her a flashlight. She cried in a way that sounded more like fear than guilt. "I thought it was just talking," she said. "Talking has invoices now." I told her we'd be getting a lawyer who speaks money as well as marriage. Money has a way of stripping things to the studs. The next morning, I met our bank manager. No drama, just a man in a shirt and tie who's seen every story. I explained the inquiry and asked about blocks on home equity lines. He clicked and nodded, put flags where flags belong, and gave me a direct number. "If anyone calls about your house, they call me first," he said. I shook his hand and meant it. On the way out, the investigator called with footage Ryan meeting another woman from Emily's office last month at the same wine bar, same script, same laugh, same elbow touch. He also had a plate number that tied back to a rental cycling under different cards. He keeps his real skin off the grid, he said. Then he paused. And he's been at a divorce attorney's office twice this week. Not with your wife. My brain clicked through options. Predator, opportunist, or both. Both is the word that sticks when simple won't hold. That afternoon, I met Emily in a public place, the park near Jake's school, because benches and open air make lies harder to launch. I told her about the plate the other woman the lawyer visits. Her face shifted through shock, anger, and something like relief. She admitted he'd hinted at helping with some personal debt and smoothing her credit file if she needed space from me. I didn't give him papers, she said again. I swear. I believe she didn't think she did. I also believed a slick hand can slide a form under a coffee cup and call it nothing. We agreed counselors for us counsel for the house. Then I asked the hard one, did he ever mention Jake? She shook her head too fast. My jaw clenched anyway. Predators test fences. Mine just got electric. Electric means you feel everything. I drove straight from the park to the investigator's office, a small suite over a tire shop that smelled like rubber and coffee. He laid out photos, timelines, complaint printouts. Then he slid over a copy of a social media post from 2 years ago, a different city, same Ryan, same game. That case ended with a woman losing a chunk of her equity and her job after sharing client info she thought was networking. My stomach turned. He tapped a screen showing Ryan walking into a building I recognized the office of a competitor to Emily's firm. Your guy's been busy, he said, and he's not just chasing romance. He's chasing lists. That was the twist I didn't want. This wasn't only about sex or even money. It was about access. My marriage had become a doorway for a man with a keyring. Doorways can be slammed, but only if you move fast and straight. I thanked the investigator, paid his bill, and asked for a written summary I could hand a lawyer in an HR department. Back in the truck, I called Michael and told him the shape of it. Then we shut it, he said. We drew a simple map for tomorrow, attorney, at 9 bank at 10 Emily's HR at noon, with her permission, and a police consult if the lender confirmed anything forged. I added one more item talk to Jake in a way that explains change without teaching him to hate his mother. That's a line I refuse to cross. As the sun dropped, I pulled onto the highway again. The radio was low, the cab steady. Betrayal hurt one way, exploitation hurt another. Together they clarified something I could finally stand on. This wasn't just a broken vow. It was a threat to my family's future, and that I know how to fight. And if this was a fight I knew how to take on, I started by keeping my word to myself. At 9 sharp, I sat with an attorney who speaks plain. I slid the folder across. He didn't dramatize. He sorted. You've got attempts, not just affairs, he said. Identity games, a house line, probed a pattern. He drafted a few letters with teeth. Hold everything. Preserve records. Talk to me first. At 10, the bank manager confirmed what my gut already knew. Someone tried to open a credit line using my info with an e-signature that wasn't mine. The timestamp landed while I was at Jake's game photos to prove it. He flagged the account and printed the log. Seeing it in black and white felt like watching a door close on my own porch. It hurt, but it held. I walked out with copies under my arm and a spine made of paper and resolve. This wasn't jealousy anymore. It was a crime creeping toward my house, and I had its footprints. Footprints lead somewhere, so at noon we followed ours into HR Meet Emily and a neutral conference room that smelled like markers and coffee. I laid out the investigator's summary. HR listened, then unlocked a drawer of their own. Turns out 2 quiet complaints had already named Ryan for side consulting and for asking unusual questions about client data. Security footage showed him tailing an employee into a badge-only area after hours. Emily's face fell in Stage's shock defense, then the awful understanding that she'd been the shortcut. She whispered that she thought he cared. Maybe he cares about lists. HR kept their voices calm, but the air tightened. They suspended Emily pending review and called building security to pull more logs. It wasn't a victory lap. It was triage. I stood there feeling both betrayed and strangely clean. Men like me believe in work, in rules, in locks that click. Hearing those locks engage did something simple and sacred. It put my dignity back where I could reach it. Reaching dignity doesn't mean the storm stops. It means you plant your feet. On the drive home, the investigator rang. He'd caught Ryan on a recorded pitch that drifted into threats when the mark hesitated. Minutes later, my phone lit with a number I didn't know. Ryan. His voice had that salesman sugar over a steel edge. He called me insecure, said adults can be discreet, said I should think about my long-term finances. I let him talk until he said the lender's name, the very one on our inquiry. That detail wasn't public. I said one sentence slow as a torque wrench, stay away from my family and my house. Then I hung up and forwarded the call log to the investigator and the attorney. The point wasn't to win a chest-thumping contest. The point was to leave a trail he couldn't charm his way out of. For the first time in weeks, my anger wasn't a fire. It was a tool. Tools fix things, but first you explain them to the people you love. That night, I sat with Jake on the back steps where the grass stains your socks and the world feels simple enough to tell the truth without breaking it. I told him Mom and I were sorting hard grown-up stuff, that he didn't cause it and he couldn't cure it, and that my job was to keep him safe and steady. He asked if I'd be at his game Saturday. I said yes, and I meant it like a vow. Inside, I asked Emily to take space at her sister's for a few nights while the house cooled and the adults got honest. She said okay with a tired nod that felt like surrender. After she left, I changed the passwords, checked the locks, and laid my papers on the table like a blueprint. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It sounded like work getting done. Work has a way of giving back what panic steals. By morning, the attorney had confirmation from the lender attempted line, mismatched signatures, IP trails pointing to places that weren't my couch. We filed what needed filing and set appointments with people who wear badges and don't care about romance. I wasn't celebrating. I was documenting. Then I made breakfast, signed a school form, and put gas in the truck because honor isn't a speech. It's 1,000 small choices in the daylight. In the mirror, I looked like a man who'd been hit and stayed standing. That matters to men my age, not for pride alone, but for the boys who watch us and learn what justice looks like when the door slams on your name. The whole truth was ugly and complete. She strayed, he hunted, and my family's future was the prize. I couldn't fix the first two. I could fight the last one. So I did, and I will. With the truth on paper and the house secured, the next step wasn't dramatic. It was deliberate. I told my attorney I was filing, not to punish, to protect. We drafted something plain: temporary orders, a clean parenting schedule, clear lines around money. I texted Emily and asked her to meet at the kitchen table at 7. No fireworks, just terms. She came in with puffy eyes and a careful voice. I said we were moving forward with divorce. We'd keep Jake out of the blast, and we'd speak to each other like adults, even when our stomachs turned. She nodded and stared at the ring on her finger. I took mine off and set it by the salt shaker. Not a speech, a boundary. She cried, not to sway me, just because endings do that. I signed where I needed to sign. The pen didn't shake. Walking those pages to the envelope felt like carrying a box to the curb. Heavy, necessary, finally honest. Honesty carried into the courtroom like a tool bag. The first hearing was quick, no soap opera, just a judge who's seen it all and a calendar that doesn't care about heartbreak. I spoke facts the way I'd practiced dates, charges, attempts, the plan for Jake. Emily's lawyer kept it narrow. Mine kept it clean. The judge set temporary orders that sounded like rails on a bridge. Weekday routines, weekends alternating. No new debt. No moves without consent. It wasn't victory. It was structure. Outside, Emily asked if I hated her. I said I didn't. Hate is a hobby. I have a son. On the drive home, I stopped for groceries and bought the boring things that mean a life is still a life. Milk, bread, trash bags. In the parking lot, I sat for a minute and felt the anger settle into something steadier, not numb, just pointed in the right direction. Justice isn't loud. It's a door that shuts and stays shut. With the door shut, the house sounded different, less like a courtroom, more like work to be done. I booked a counselor for myself, a plain-spoken guy who lets silence do the heavy lifting. I told the story once, then stopped telling it. At home, I fixed the leaky faucet I'd ignored, sorted the garage, threw out a pile of someday. Simple jobs had a way of returning my balance. Saturday, Jake had a game. I showed up early, set up the folding chair, and yelled my throat raw in the harmless way dads do. He caught a slant route and looked over to see if I'd seen. I had. We grabbed burgers after, and when he asked if things would be okay, I said yes, and believed it for the length of a whole breath. That night, I slept without checking my phone. No motel pings, no alerts, just the hum of a fridge and the steady kind of quiet you can finally rest inside. Rest made room for the last hard conversation. Emily and I met on the porch at Sunset Neutral Ground, where marriages have been both built and buried. She apologized without spin. No excuses, no half facts. I listened not to reopen the case, to close it without poison. I told her I forgave her in the only way I know how, by protecting what comes next more than punishing what's behind. We agreed on the tone of future texts, the drop-off routine, the rule that Ryan is a past tense we don't invite near our son. When she left, she touched the railing like it could steady her. I stayed hands on the banister and watched the sky go from orange to ordinary. The ache didn't vanish. It changed shape. It felt less like a wound and more like a scar I could live with. I went inside, set tomorrow's alarm, and laid out Jake's cleats by the door. The storm had passed. Now came the building. And when the house finally stayed quiet, the lesson was louder than any argument. Honor isn't a speech. It's the line you hold when no one's clapping. Self-respect isn't a pose. It's paperwork, filed boundaries, kept a kid buckled in on time. The price of deceit shows up in places you can't ensure sleep. Trust the way your son looks for you in the bleachers. But there's a payoff in doing the hard, boring, grown man things. Tell the truth. Once protect the home, choose law over rage. Show up anyway. I learned that dignity isn't about never being hurt. It's about not letting hurt decide who you are. If you're a man like me, 35, 50, 60, you don't need a hero story. You need a plan and a spine. Close the door that needs closing. Guard the people who need guarding. Then build slow, steady, honest. If this were your porch, your card, your name, what would you do? Confront Walk Lawyer Up. Drop your answer in the comments. Your line starts where you say it does.